On the evening of March 14, 2025, a tornado formed in the hills of Stone County, Arkansas, and began moving northeast. It was on the ground for 2 hours and 13 minutes. It traveled 118 miles. At its peak, it was nearly a mile wide, and its winds reached 170 miles per hour. It crossed the Arkansas-Missouri border and tore through Ozarks County, Missouri, partially destroying homes and sweeping one completely off its foundation. The next morning it was rated EF4, the second most powerful tornado category on the scale. The same storm system produced 3 separate tornadoes in Wayne County, Missouri the following day. Those 3 tornadoes killed 6 people. Wayne County has approximately 11,000 residents spread across nearly 800 square miles of Oaks Hills, linked by 2-lane highways and narrow gravel roads snaking through the forest. The people who live there are spread thin. When a tornado comes through, the response time for emergency services is measured in the wrong direction. That was March 2025. 2 months later, in May 2025, a tornado outbreak produced 61 tornadoes across the Midwest, caused 26 deaths and $5.9 billion in damage, and sent an EF3 tornado tracking more than 20 miles through urban St. Louis with 152 mile-per-hour winds and $1.6 billion of damage in under half an hour. Missouri has experienced 5 of the 25 deadliest tornadoes in American history. The Joplin tornado of 2011 killed 158 people, destroyed over 7,000 homes, and caused $2.8 billion in damage. It remains the deadliest tornado in American history since modern record-keeping began. The question most Ozarkers live with and most visitors never ask is why. Why does the Ozarks sit in the path of some of the violent weather produced anywhere in the world? The answer is geography, and it is worth understanding before the next outbreak arrives. Subscribe right now. Hit the button and the bell. The atmosphere over the center of North America is a collision zone for 3 distinct air masses that almost nowhere else on the continent encounter each other with such regularity or such violence. From the south, warm and humid air flows northward from the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf is a year-round source of moisture and heat, and the flat terrain between the Gulf Coast and the Missouri Ozarks offers nothing to slow or redirect that flow. The warm, wet air moves north freely, carrying the moisture and instability that severe thunderstorms require. From the west and northwest, 2 other air masses descend. Wet Pacific air crosses the Rocky Mountains, and in crossing them it loses its moisture to the mountains and arrives on the eastern side drier and denser than it was. Separately, cold polar air pushes south from Canada. When these drier, denser, or colder air masses encounter the warm, moist Gulf air moving north, the result is the atmospheric collision that produces severe thunderstorms, and in the right conditions, tornadoes. The flat terrain of Kansas and Oklahoma allows these air masses to build and travel without interruption. By the time they reach the Missouri Ozarks, they have often reached the level of instability and organization required to produce supercells, the rotating thunderstorms that generate the most powerful tornadoes. The Ozarks does not create this danger. The danger arrives fully formed from the south and west, carrying the energy that has been building across hundreds of miles of uninterrupted flat land. But the Ozarks terrain does something to those storms when they arrive. The hills and ridges of the Ozarks Plateau are not high enough to deflect or break up a well-organized supercell. What they can do is create localized effects that are difficult to predict. A tornado moving through the flat terrain of the Arkansas River Valley behaves differently from one that encounters the ridges and creek hollows of the Missouri Ozarks. The terrain can channel wind, create localized speed-ups, and produce damage patterns that surprise even experienced meteorologists. A community that sits in a hollow between 2 ridges may receive very different damage than a community on a ridge top half a mile away from the same tornado, for reasons that are only fully understood after the fact. Hit the like button. It tells the algorithm this story matters. The seasonal pattern produces 2 distinct windows of severe weather risk in the Ozarks. The spring season, March through May is the primary severe weather window. This is when the temperature contrasts between air masses are sharpest, when the Gulf moisture supply is rebuilding after winter, and when the jet stream position is most favorable for bringing polar and Pacific air into contact with warm Gulf air over the Ozarks. The spring of 2025 demonstrated exactly what the primary season can produce. The March EF4 tornado, the May outbreak that killed 26 people, and the St. Louis EF3 all within a 10-week period. The second window runs from October through December. Fall severe weather in the Ozarks is less well understood by the public than spring severe weather because it feels counterintuitive. Tornadoes in November and December seem wrong in a way that tornadoes in April do not. But the atmospheric dynamics that produce severe weather do not observe the cultural calendar. As long as the Gulf of Mexico is warm enough to supply moisture, and the jet stream position brings colder air into contact with it, the Ozarks is in the game. October and November tornadoes are less common than spring tornadoes, but they occur at significantly higher risk to life because they frequently develop after dark, when visibility is zero, and tornado sirens are the only warning system that matters. And many rural Ozarks communities are far enough from the nearest siren that the sound never reaches them at sleeping volume. The National Weather Service office in Jackson, Kentucky, which covers a significant portion of the storm corridor affecting the Ozarks region, reported in May 2025 that it was operating with reduced staffing due to federal funding cuts. The overnight forecaster positions had been eliminated when the May 16 tornado outbreak produced the St. Louis EF3, and the broader outbreak produced 26 deaths. The office coordinated personnel from neighboring offices to address the emergency. Personnel who were not routinely assigned to that coverage area and who were working in unfamiliar territory during one of the most dangerous storm events of 2025. Staffing cuts at weather forecast offices during tornado season in one of the most tornado-vulnerable corridors in America is the kind of policy decision that does not make news until a storm makes it relevant. Then it makes very specific, very human news about who was warned and who was not, and how many minutes the difference was. The specific vulnerability of the rural Ozarks to tornadoes is not primarily the storms themselves. Storms of similar intensity affect communities across the Great Plains as well. The specific vulnerability is the combination of three factors that exist simultaneously in the deep Ozarks counties. The population is sparse and spread thin across terrain that limits travel speed. The housing stock includes a significant proportion of mobile and manufactured homes that do not provide meaningful protection against even moderate tornado winds. And the warning infrastructure, the sirens, the emergency broadcast systems, the early warning time that allows people to reach shelter is thinner and less redundant in rural Shannon County than it is in suburban St. Louis. The people who live in Wayne County and Ozark County and Douglas County are not naive about the weather. They have lived through the storms and they know what the sky looks like before bad weather arrives. They read the rotation of the clouds and the color of the light and the behavior of the animals in ways that the residents of suburban areas have largely lost the ability to do. They know the specific hollows that funnel weather and the specific ridges that offer some shelter. What they cannot overcome when a 2-hour mile-wide EF4 tornado is tracking toward their township is the thin margin between adequate warning time and no warning time at all. Missouri has experienced 5 of the 25 deadliest tornadoes in American history. The geography that produces the Ozarks, the same karst plateau, the same spring-fed rivers, the same forest cover that makes the region extraordinary, also places it directly in the path of the atmospheric collision zone that produces some of the most violent weather on Earth. The mountains that would deflect these storms did not form here. The flat terrain that lets them build and travel unimpeded continues from the Gulf of Mexico to the Ozarks edge without a significant barrier. The next outbreak will not ask permission. It will follow the same dynamics that produced the 2011 Joplin tornado and the March 2025 EF4 and the May 2025 outbreak and every storm before them. The Ozarks will be in the path, because the Ozarks is always in the path. The question is whether the warning systems, the shelter infrastructure, and the emergency response capacity will be adequate when it arrives. Based on the staffing reports from May 2025, there is reason to ask that question carefully. The specific history of Missouri tornadoes is documented in ways that make the danger concrete rather than statistical. The Joplin 2011 tornado tracked 22 miles across the city at over 200 miles per hour. The 1925 tri-state tornado, the deadliest in American history, began in Missouri. It traveled 219 miles across Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana, killing 695 people in 3.5 hours. Its path crossed the edge of the Ozarks Plateau, moving through communities that had no warning and no effective shelter options. It remains a century later, the benchmark against which every other American tornado is measured. Between those two events, the Missouri Ozarks absorbed tornado after tornado across generations of communities that rebuilt, adapted, and kept living in the hills because the hills were home. The 1880 Marshfield tornado killed 99 people in the Webersteff County seat on a Saturday afternoon when the streets were full of market day crowds. The 1896 St. Louis tornado killed more than 250 people in the city's south side. The 2003 Pierce City tornado destroyed much of the small Lawrence County town's downtown in minutes. Each of these storms followed the same atmospheric pathway that brings severe weather to the Ozarks. Each of them produced the same aftermath, the immediate human shock, the community rebuilding, the gradual reintegration of the event into the regional understanding of what living in this geography means. The Ozarks has not become storm-hardened so much as storm-experienced. The people who have lived through the cycles understand what the stillness before certain types of storms means, what the greenish light indicates, what the sound that has been described as a freight train actually sounds like when it is close enough to matter. That knowledge passed from generation to generation in the same way that the Bittersweet Project teenagers documented other forms of Ozarks knowledge in the 1970s is not in any warning system. It lives in the people, and the people who live in the most storm-vulnerable communities. The rural hollows, the townships without sirens, the older manufactured homes on ridges where the terrain provides no shelter, are also the people with the least access to the infrastructure that would compensate for what the knowledge alone cannot handle. Subscribe if you haven't. Hit the bell. Drop a comment. Have you been through a severe storm in the Ozarks? Because the people who know something about this geography that no weather map fully captures. Thank you for watching. The truth doesn't shout. It waits for you to look closer.